Josh Kerr just beat Jake Wightman and a field of world champions in a race that hadn't been part of the Commonwealth Games in decades. 2 weeks after breaking a world record that stood since 1999, Kerr got boxed in and nearly buried in a stacked field. What he did in the final 300 meters is the story everyone in Glasgow is still talking about. The men's mile had not been run at the Commonwealth Games in 60 years. The last time it happened was 1966. Bringing it back was a tribute to one of the most famous races in track history, the Miracle Mile between Roger Bannister and John Landy back in 1954. That race is still talked about today because it brought together the two fastest milers alive at the exact moment their careers collided. So when officials decided to bring the mile back for Glasgow, they weren't just adding an event to fill a schedule. They were setting the stage for history to repeat itself, and they picked the perfect year to do it. And nobody understood that pressure better than Josh Kerr. Just 2 weeks earlier, Kerr had done something only one man in history had ever done. At the London Diamond League, he ran the mile in 3 minutes and 42.66 seconds. That broke a record that had stood for 27 years, set by Hicham El Guerrou back in 1999. Kerr became the first human being to run a mile in under 3 minutes and 43 seconds. His splits for that race were almost perfectly even, 55.3, then 55.8, then 55.4, and a blistering 54.9 to close it out. He had trained specifically for this. He even called the project Project 222, because 222 seconds is exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds. He had a number in his head for months, and he hit it almost exactly. To get there, Kerr didn't just train harder. He trained smarter. He installed an altitude chamber in his own bedroom and built a system to pump extra oxygen into his home gym, letting him simulate 3 different altitude environments without ever leaving his house. Every part of his preparation was built around one single race, and when the moment came, he trusted it completely. He said afterward that he wasn't fighting the pace that day. He was simply flowing with it, letting his training carry him through. So walking into Glasgow, Kerr wasn't just a favorite. He was the fastest miler who has ever lived, racing in his home country, in the same stadium where he learned to compete as a kid. But a world record doesn't win you a championship race. And this field in Glasgow was loaded. Cameron Myers, the 20-year-old Australian phenom, had been tearing through 2026 all year. He broke the oceanic record in the 1500 meters, he won the Prefontaine Classic Mile, and he was hungry to prove he belonged on the same track as Kerr. Then there was Timothy Cheruiyot from Kenya, a former Olympic silver medalist and a world championship runner-up, one of the most experienced championship racers in the entire field. And of course, Jake Wightman, Kerr's own countryman, a former world champion himself, and someone who has been racing alongside Kerr since they were kids growing up in Scotland. Wightman had just come off a world championship silver medal of his own, and he openly talked about the dream of a Scottish sweep on the podium, in front of a home crowd. This wasn't a race where Kerr could simply run away from everyone. This was a field that knew exactly how dangerous he was, and they were not going to let him control the pace easily. The race started cautiously. Chipiso Masalela from Botswana set the early tempo, and for the first 2 laps, the pack stayed tight together. There was pushing. There was shoving. Runners were jostling for position, trying not to get boxed in on the inside of the track. And then it happened to the one man who couldn't afford it. Josh Kerr, the world record holder, the man everyone came to watch, got trapped on the rail. Runners were on either side of him. He couldn't move outward. He couldn't accelerate. For a moment, the home crowd's biggest hope looked stuck, boxed in exactly when the race was about to heat up. Kerr later explained his mindset in that moment. He said he had fast runners outside of him, so he knew that space would eventually open up once the real racing began. He said his job was simply to stay patient, not panic, and trust that his moment would come. He even joked afterward that on a windy day like that one, being tucked into the box on the rail was actually exactly where he wanted to be, sheltered from the wind while everyone else did the work around him. That patience was tested through the third lap, when Cheruiyot made the first real move to push the pace forward. Kerr stayed controlled, still working his way out of trouble, still boxed in, as the field surged toward the bell lap. Then came the moment everyone in that stadium was waiting for. As the bell rang for the final lap, Kerr found his window. He worked his way through the traffic and came through on the outside, moving into third place right as the real race began. From there, he swept past both Cheruiyot and Myers on the back straight, taking the lead with roughly 300 meters remaining. And once Kerr hit the front, this race was basically decided. Jake Wightman tried to go with him around the final bend. For a few strides, it looked like the Scottish teammates might battle all the way to the line together. But Kerr had something extra in the tank, and Wightman simply couldn't match it. Kerr pulled away down the home straight, while the crowd at Scotstoun Stadium roared behind him. He crossed the finish line in 3 minutes, 54.12 seconds, sealing Commonwealth gold in front of his own countrymen. Cameron Myers held on for silver, and Timothy Cheruiyot took bronze. Jake Wightman, who had matched Kerr's move at the final bend, faded in the closing meters and finished fifth. After the race, Kerr talked about what it meant to hear his home crowd instead of a national anthem he'd grown used to. He said hearing Scotland's own song playing for him felt completely different, and that competing on the very track where he learned to race as a young boy made the moment even more special. He even said he could hear the crowd singing along during the slower opening laps, and that he was humming along himself, saving his energy for what was coming. For the hour after the race, Kerr stayed out on the track, signing autographs and taking pictures with young fans who might one day chase the same dream he just lived out. What makes this win remarkable isn't just the medal, it's the timing. Most athletes need weeks or months to recover physically and mentally after chasing a world record. The nervous system takes a beating, the legs need to rebuild, and the mental focus required for a record attempt is not something you can just switch back on 2 weeks later. Kerr broke the biggest record in his sport, then turned around and won a major championship final using tactical racing instincts, not just raw speed. He had to fight through contact, stay patient in a box, and outthink a stacked field, all while carrying the weight of being the most famous name in the race and the reason the stadium was sold out in the first place. This is also why comparisons to the original Miracle Mile made sense. That 1954 race between Bannister and Landy captured the world's imagination because it combined two of the greatest milers of that era in one unforgettable showdown. 60 years later, Glasgow gave fans something similar. A world record holder, a stacked field of championship-level talent, and a finish that lived up to the hype the entire event promised. For Kerr, this Commonwealth title adds to an already remarkable list of achievements.